Sounded like your teeth breaking.
Welcome
To the show.
You changed it. You changed
it. You doggone right I did. I gotta keep you on your toes.
I don't like it.
I don't care.
Well, I'm gonna actually. This is. Go ahead. Do you?
Trying a new drink today. New to me anyway. Tanner purchased this one. Oh. It sounded like your teeth breaking.
I'll edit that out. Or maybe I won't.
Don't. Ooh.
Decided to eat a cough drop, and then I was like, nope, that's gonna be annoying. So I bit into it, and it just like that noise. I'm gonna do mine. Ready?
This is Redcon 1. A little bit of embellishment on that one. I dig it.
Mine is Black Rifle energy drink. I didn't even know they made an energy drink.
Oh, you're drinking that one. Okay.
Yeah, I've already had that one flavor-wise.
Yeah.
I don't know if my cough drop is dramatically affecting the flavor or not. So we will just table that for a few seconds, and I'll let you know how it is in a minute. But Freedom Punch.
It's kind of interesting. Peach zero sugar is probably affecting that a little bit.
It's not as well. I've recognized when it comes to energy drinks, different people like different things.
Yeah.
And I like the Ghost Peach because it's like
peach.
Eating peach candy.
Yeah.
You know, it's fake artificial peach candy.
Yep.
I'm at the movies kind of flavor. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. It is peach.
Whereas the Redcon 1 peach is more of a subtle flavor.
Yeah.
And I know, like I was talking to, Avery shout out Avery from the TikTok. He was talking about it. He likes more subtle energy drink flavors. And he doesn't like Ghost as much because it is super sweet. My brother doesn't like Ghost as much because it's super sweet. And I'm like, bro, that's why I like Ghost.
Right.
Is because it tastes like I'm drinking regular soda or something.
To me, it's more of a thing of like, it's an energy drink, which means it's got a lot of crap in there that does not naturally taste good.
Taurine.
And so you need to cover it up. Like, I don't mind subtle flavored things in general. But when it comes to energy drinks, especially like the higher caffeine ones, dude, raw caffeine is gross. Like, it does not taste good.
Have you ever had powdered caffeine?
Yeah.
So I used to mix my own pre-workouts like from scratch.
Yeah,
now I just buy a cheap pre-workout and mix my own things into it.
Right.
But I used to build them from scratch, and caffeine was you can just buy powdered caffeine. And every once in a while when I'm like, okay, I'm going to mix this into like my Mountain Dew or something like that. It makes Mountain Dew taste like garbage.
Awful.
When you mix like 300 milligrams of caffeine into it. Because believe it or not, Mountain Dew doesn't have that much caffeine in it.
Yeah.
And we're like, Mountain Dew's got so much caffeine. Bro.
No, actually
coffee has more.
The bad part of Mountain Dew is the sodium content, right? Is that
I don't know.
I think Mountain Dew's stupid high sodium.
Is it?
I think that's kind of the main thing with that. Because Mountain Dew is probably objectively the worst, like soda, like regular soda. But
I honestly don't know the difference between it and other.
Because I know like it has more
caffeine.
I remember looking into this. It's not high in caffeine because Mountain Dew is
higher than Coke, but
80?
not high.
80, I think.
Yeah, and the new like
something?
Zero is like 90.
Because Coke and Dr. Pepper and Pepsi, I think, are all like 76, and I think Mountain Dew's like 80 something.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher.
It's not that much. It's really not that much. Like you said, a cup of coffee's higher. I do remember there being something else about Mountain Dew, and I think it was the sodium that's significantly higher than other like the colas.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. Because I always figured like Coke would be the worst because it's acidic. It's like super acidic.
Well, I guess that depends on whether you're talking about new, like Coke or old Coke. If you're talking about old Coke, yeah.
What's the difference between new Coke and old Coke?
Like the old school formula was like there was some gnarly stuff in there. My dad
what year of old school are we talking about? Because
I'm talking like 60s, 70s Coke.
Okay, because like 20s Coke had cocaine in it.
Right. No.
I bet that had
post cocaine Coca-Cola, pre non whatever other crap they had Coca-Cola was still gnarly.
So just because I'm ADD today. Did you see the video of the Macron or whatever and a couple other like global like leaders, and they're like excited and they see each other, and then they realize that they got a bag of, allegedly, all of this is fake and for entertainment purposes only. But this is a video, so you can watch it for yourself. He's got a bag of Coke with a Coke spoon, and then there's a line on the table. And so when they sit down, they realize, oh, crap, we left our Coke out. And so one of the guys scoops the powder off, and then Macron grabs the bag and the spoon and tucks it into his pocket. And they have this look on their face like, oh, crap. Have you seen that?
No.
Bro.
Can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, dude. I'll send it to you as soon as we get done. It's funny because I know I send you these videos, but I also know that you don't watch them.
Yeah.
And so the really important ones where I'm like, okay, Phil has to watch this. I text it to you.
Yes.
And I don't want to abuse that because I don't want to get to the point where when I text it to you, you're like, oh, I'm not going to watch that either because it's just one of the. So it's like I try to once a week text.
Now, if you text me, if you text me something like once a day or every 2 days, that's fine. I will watch that one. I know that's what that's for. Right. And
I'm similar. If you send me a bunch of videos on a platform, there's a good chance I won't watch them. But if you send them to me in either Messenger, like Facebook Messenger, or text message, one of those two, I will almost always watch it.
I haven't watched an Instagram reel in like 3 months because I just don't get on that platform. Because I have no reason to get on that platform.
If I'm on my phone, we were just talking about this. I want to get back to the soda thing, but we were just talking about it before we started the show, that if you send me a message while I'm on my phone watching videos, I will watch that video no matter what platform it is in. Right. And then I'll just stay on that platform. Right. So I'll watch a bunch of Instagram because like Bryson, shout out Bryson, not my son, Kobe Bricken. But he'll send me stuff like while I'm on my phone because I'm guessing he's just sitting down for the night. Right. And then I'll be on Instagram for like more reels. Yeah. Or Courtney or you or somebody will send me TikTok, and then I'll just sit there on TikTok for 20 minutes or whatever. But yeah, and so I just use the platform that whoever sent me the last thing is. Mm-hmm. I don't have one platform I stick to. So there's no guarantee you're going to get me to watch anything on any platform because there's a good chance I just won't watch it because I'm not on that platform for the day. Right. It's so dumb. But anyway.
Well, and that's kind of the same thing with me. Like if I start watching your TikToks, I'll watch all your TikToks, but I don't get notifications for Instagram, and I don't really have a reason to go on there other than to watch your reels. And so I don't dedicate time to doing that. So I haven't looked at an Instagram reel in months. Yeah. I have like probably a couple hundred sitting in my message.
The thing I like about TikTok while watching videos, like if you send me like 10 videos, I can scroll back to the earliest one and then just scroll through what you sent me. Yep. And so even if
well done design.
Yeah, so even if I accidentally am just scrolling, I'm still scrolling the videos you sent me, whereas you can't do that on Instagram. And so you have to click in, click out, and then sometimes it won't go back, and it goes like all the way back, and then you got to click in the message again. Its design is faulty.
The most first world problem I have ever heard in my life.
In the ancient days of giants, when the earth was wild and free, a creature roamed the valleys, cloaked in mystery. Is he born of angels' blood and man, a Nephilim so tall, or a shadow of the fallen, yet heeding the Maker's call? He's a biblically accurate Bigfoot, with a lineage from the skies. Not a myth or legend, but a truth that never dies. Is he a remnant of the Nephilim, a titan standing tall? Or does he have the word of God upon him, the last to hear the call?
But you are 100% correct. It is poor design. Bless you. Oh, I thought you were going to sneeze.
No, I just don't want a bunch of coughs being on that episode, so I'll edit it out.
I hear you.
But yeah.
So back to the soda thing. My dad told me about when he was a kid. The Coca-Cola, was a potent enough acidic mixture. I don't know who all was involved, but he knew some kids that put a frog in a can of Coke while they went and did some other stuff. They just left it there. They came back a couple hours later, and it was just bones.
Oh, gosh.
Like hours. In a matter of hours, Coke dissolved a frog. So, yeah. Old Coke was some different stuff.
I wonder what was in it, you know?
I have no idea.
Because
they'll never tell you.
I know it's one of those weird things because there's a lot of things that they've determined have been unhealthy for us.
Right.
And they've, gotten rid of like uranium glass. Duh.
Yeah.
Do you know they used to have a kid's toy that like they put in like Cracker Jack boxes that it was a uranium ring and literally inside of it was plutonium? They sent that out to millions of kids across the United States as a toy.
I'm not even a little bit surprised. Dude.
But realistically though, our generation is the first generation that statistically will not live longer as a whole than their parents' generation.
Yeah.
Because every generation, pretty much since they invented
penicillin,
has gotten longer and longer.
Yep.
Our generation is the first one that was shorter than their parents.
Yep.
But yet our parents got plutonium rings in the mail. So you're telling me that something
that affected them or their children more?
But you're telling me something in our environment is so much worse for us than plutonium rings and uranium glass. But it's not the stabby stab or the plastic, because that's safe for us, bro. Somebody was on the TikTok. If you have TikTok and you haven't seen our post that went viral, you should do yourself a favor. Go click on it
through the comments
and let the music play in the background. It's a subtle little Mad World. Just subtle music play in the background and read the 26,000 comments, or read 1,000. But literally, there's just an endless supply of a mixture of very rational, well thought out conspiracy theories and people's crazy coming through. If I had $1 for every person that posted "We are all God," I'd have like $20. And
I think you're lowballing that by a lot.
Probably there were a lot of people who are like, "I'm all God," and I comment the same thing. Goodness, I hope not, because if I'm God, that's scary.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And I'm like, I'm not actually engaging with you. Can't you tell? Like,
no, if they're not smart enough, never mind.
No, that's fair. Anyway, we are all God. But why did I even bring that up? Oh yeah, because somebody said that our generation, people will look back in 100 years at the way that we just put plastic everywhere, the way that we look back on previous generations that put lead everywhere, and I was like, okay, interesting, because like for the first time they found like plastic in placenta and like in preborn babies and stuff, and it's like plastic is chemical. There's a lot of chemicals in it, and so it makes you wonder what that's doing to us long term.
There's chemicals everywhere. My question to anyone who wants
PFAS.
to what
PFAS,
sure, my
forever chemicals.
My question to anyone who tells us that we all need to stop using A, B, or C is, what's your alternative that's better, and how can you prove that that's safe?
So we've switched over from using the nonstick pans as much to just cast iron,
right?
Which I prefer cast iron anyway, because in my opinion, everything tastes better in cast iron because the flavors come out. Not that cast iron's perfect, but you also get your iron because literally as you're scraping your food, iron gets into it, and you don't have to take an iron supplement as much. But also, I was reading one report that it was like when you scratch Teflon, it releases like 90,000 forever chemicals into your food.
Yeah, Teflon's not great for sure. Well, and
but Teflon, it's basically a plastic polymer.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but to your point, using something, but I agree with you, using something that is more beneficial. So I don't like cast iron, or I don't like Teflon. So therefore I will use cast iron as much as possible when it's practical.
Right.
But when, you go out to eat and there's a plastic cup with a plastic straw, I'm not going to be like, excuse me, can you put the water in my wooden cup, please, instead? You know what I mean?
Well, and if you think about
kind of obnoxious.
Like water lines, right? That's plastic. That is all plastic. And there's not really a better alternative as of right now.
Right, because the metal ones rust so fast.
I was going to say, if you go iron, I worked for Village Maintenance back home, and water lines rust, and then you've got rust in your water, and that's not great.
Right. Well, and even if you think that like, oh, I'll just drink things out of cans. You know what they line the inside of aluminum cans with?
Yeah.
Plastic.
Yeah.
Because there's tests you can put your can of pop into something that'll corrode only the aluminum away, and it leaves you with a plastic bag. It looks so funny.
Bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. But people don't realize that even the things that are metal that we use are oftentimes lined with plastic nowadays.
Yeah. Yep. It'll never be perfect, and you'll never find the perfectly healthy alternative. There's dangers everywhere.
Right. But what if plastic is given rise to a lot of the mental health issues?
It's certainly possible. It's not something to be totally ignored, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a very plausible conspiracy theory.
For sure.
And I think that plastic could be very dangerous, but I mean, like, growing up, and there's little thing, like there's a big difference between drinking out of a plastic cup and chewing on a plastic wrapper that you had for an hour and a half. Like growing up, like if there was like a plastic straw, you would just sit there and chew on it. Well, that's dramatically different than
blow pops.
Oh yeah.
You
just chew on it. Yeah. And so like I try to make sure that like Bennett isn't chewing on plastic. Mm-hmm. But again, there's a difference between chewing on a plastic piece for an hour and a half or swallowing some of that plastic piece and drinking out of a plastic straw, in my mind at least. And maybe there's not. Maybe I'm just delusional. But I feel like there's a difference. But I would like to see us use less plastic anyway.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So and I'm not pro plastic. I'm just saying
whatever, big plastic.
Yeah.
How much did they pay you?
Clearly not enough for me to quit doing my job.
Mr. FBI.
We saw a Fed yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. I was telling Courtney about it. It's like, we saw a Fed. She was like, black unmarked vehicle. I was like, actually, it was white.
It was white.
It was a white vehicle.
Was it like it was Escape? Ford Escape? Something like that. One of those generic Ford SUVs.
And like if you ask ChatGPT, hey, generate an image of a Fed for me, it would generate this dude. Like 100%.
Close cut hair.
Oh my gosh.
Shades.
The sunglass brand. The giant piece attached to it, visibly attached.
Dude, I think it was a USP.
Oh my gosh.
It was a big ol'.
That thing was a massive pew pew. Gosh,
big ol'.
I gotta edit that.
Big iron.
Pew pew. I might not edit that. I don't know. I'm tired of editing words out.
Homeboy was packing a large cordless hole puncher.
And he had those brown khakis on with the like
pink plaid shirt.
My goodness, like, dude was as fed as you could get.
The most federal agent looking.
Oh my gosh, it was so. Dude, like if you want to stand out, right, for real, and if you want to, especially in Western Nebraska,
come out here. That is
if you want to stand out, you are gonna stand out. And the ironic thing is, the thing that didn't immediately make us aware that he was a Fed, it wasn't the piece on his side.
Right.
Because that's not uncommon.
Right.
The size of the piece and then the clothes attached to it, that was what it was like, Fed.
Right.
I want to know what he was out here for. Actually, I don't want to know. He's probably like in a van down like the street from us, and he's monitoring us. He was following us around that day.
Probably monitoring me.
He's listening ATF. Right now. Hey, Fed buddy, if you want an energy drink, come knock on the door. No questions asked. I'll give you a Redcon one right now. I've got an alert on my phone. It'll pop up.
I'm not even going to be surprised.
You know, if you, all you got to do is come to the door and you don't even have to knock, and I will come up and give you a Redcon one.
You know what? I hadn't even thought about it, but what if that wasn't coincidence that he was at Pump when we were?
Yeah. What if he's following us?
What if he was following us?
Because of the podcast.
Who knows?
I mean, we were looking up a pretty controversial subject.
I just want everybody to know that I do not want to unalive myself.
Yeah,
My
dude.
mental state is good.
Bro.
I'm healthy. I'm happy.
Same. Like, I'm in one of the best places I've been in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm not on any.
I just want everybody to know if I turn up having cordless hole punched myself 47 times in the back, I didn't.
So kind of dramatic switch, but it fits.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about a couple of things before we get into the bulk of the episode. So the first thing is, man, did you see that unalive sewer slide thing that happened in Dawson County?
Yeah.
So one of the things that cued me in, I was looking at, because I love psychology stuff. So my brain is going, what happened? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information out there. This family put a lot of stuff out there. If you want to look it up, look it up. They were huge advocates for mental health and stuff like that.
Hot stroke. Help. Can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yeah.
Are you aware that a mutual friend of ours has a cousin that was like close with that family, like knew them?
I am not aware.
Okay.
But yeah.
Our mutual friend, her cousin, knows them and had a little bit of information on that. So are you aware of what the reason was that he was even there?
So wasn't into graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but apparently he had a kind of a history of
long history,
that type of behavior.
Yeah.
And yeah, the mom got him out of mental health care, to go to daughter's graduation.
Son.
Son.
They're both sons.
Son. Yeah. Okay. My bad.
Well, but one of the keys to what I noticed while reading up on it, and this is something I think is important and I want to talk about it because on top of conspiracy theories, I think this is it's a good platform to just share stuff, for awareness. One of the keys that I read was he had just changed his SSRI 3 days before. And I don't know why we don't talk about this very much, but when you're first changing or first starting an SSRI as an antidepressant, statistically, you are at a dramatically increased odd of taking your own life and others around you at the same time. And he had just switched 3 days before and he was experiencing symptoms. There should be a better system of caution that comes with these kinds of things, especially if it's a person who has those kinds of, we'll just say tendencies. And I don't know, and I'm not going to get into a lot of the details because people listening to this might know them, and I don't want to step on toes or scratch an itch that, or
that's not what we're trying
pick off a wound or a scab that I didn't mean to. But just in the situation, in psychology classes, we learned at length about the increased odds and why you are more likely to take your own life on an antidepressant than you are off of it. And why, and going through the reasons. But when you go and you get prescribed something like that, they don't talk to you about it.
Yeah.
They don't tell you or you're at an increased risk of doing that. And so if you have tendencies and you have tried to take your own life, or you have assaulted others, you are more likely to do that when you were on the medicine than when you were off of it. And so it's one of those things where we can bring awareness to all of this other stuff. And I'm not saying anything against SSRIs because I think that they are a great tool in getting mentally healthy. I think they can be used as a phenomenal tool. And, I had been on them before I became a Christian, and they were huge in me being healthy. But why do we gloss over that very important fact when we prescribe them?
Yeah.
Because, and again, it goes back to anything that disrupts the pharmaceutical world, we're just not going to talk about it, and it gets to a point where it's like, there's a lot of them out there and there's a lot that are prescribed in the United States. And I think they're just afraid that it would hurt their money line, when in reality, it's something that needs researched better and more as to why it happens, so that psychologically and counseling wise, we can begin to help people. Yeah. But so putting it out there, he had just changed his meds, and it's like, it should have been a monitored situation based off of where he was at. But anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the episode is, did you watch, I know you didn't because I already asked you, but Tim Tebow was on the Sean Ryan show. You know the Sean Ryan show, right?
Yep.
It's like a 3.5 hour long episode. It's a doozy, but it is well worth the listen. And a lot of the conversation is not what you would expect Tim Tebow to be talking about. And he is talking about on the show trafficking, human trafficking, and some ways in which they've uncovered some things that they've done, trying to bring awareness to the situation and stuff like that. And he was talking about what they've started to do in some of these places is while they were hurting, we'll put it that way. You guys know what I'm talking about when they are hurting these underage humans. They started reading the Bible to them while they're doing it. So that in the future, because the number one advocate for getting human trafficking victims out of their situation are Christians. And so when somebody then begins to share the gospel with somebody who went through that,
PTSD trigger
immediately.
Oh my god.
And so they're less susceptible to being saved out of the system by Christians.
That's a level of evil that, holy smoke. Wow.
That tells you everything you need to know about what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like yeah. And man, I just want to bring awareness to it. And I don't want to get into it because if you're not capable of handling that, don't go listen to it. But man, do yourself a favor if you agree with me that this is a situation that we need to bring light to. Go check out the Tim Tebow interview on the Sean Ryan show. Listen to it, share it. I mean, even if you can't handle listening to it, go comment on it, give it a thumbs up, a positive review, whatever, just to try to bring more awareness to it.
Yeah.
If you see a clip from it on like TikTok or something, share it, that kind of stuff, because man, it's incredible to me, the level of evil that exists within the world. And he kind of goes into some of the details about like, you know, the system is starting to shift from being abducted to being bred into the system and stuff like that, so that they don't have, But anyway, it's tough. It's a tough topic. I don't want to get into it because this podcast is not the place where we get into that unless we have a what's that term? An asterisk? No,
trigger warning?
Yeah. But anyway, we usually will start an episode off if it's going to be heavy with a trigger warning way ahead of time. We didn't do that, so I apologize. So we're not going to get too heavy into it just because of that. But yeah. So on a little bit of a lighter note, and we'll transition a little bit slower so that we can get into the bulk of what we're going to talk about today. Was it last week we talked about the Mandela effect? Was that 2 weeks ago?
I think that was 2 weeks ago, but I could be wrong.
But anyway, the Mandela effect.
Yeah. So there's one in particular that I recently came across someone else bringing up. I think it was on a TikTok a day or two ago. The Chick-fil-A one. There is... Dude, there are so many people who are in agreement with me, and people that have like worked there, and they have the same thought process that I do. I thought this was a weird spelling for it, and I distinctly remember even pronouncing it differently because it was spelled differently. And the more of these that I look into, and especially with like brands like the Fruit of the Loom thing, and I didn't look into this any further, but somebody said something about Target and the friggin' dog with the target on its eye. Apparently someone is trying to say that wasn't a thing. Okay, so at this point, I think most of us can agree that there are at least a few things that are true that we have been told are not true.
Right.
Right? Chick-fil-A was spelled different. Some people think it was with a K. Some people think it was with a C. Probably both. I don't know, but I'm dead certain. I'm 1,000% certain that it was CHIC at one point. I know that it was. I do not have a doubt in my mind. And yet they're saying no, it wasn't. Same thing with the Fruit of the Loom thing. There was never a cornucopia. Yes, there was. There absolutely was. And it's kind of terrifying to me because I went to do some research on this, and it occurred to me that you can just lie about whether a photograph is legit or not unless you know the person that took it and can prove that if you don't have a printed photograph from whatever time anything was allegedly in existence, they can just lie and say, well, it's just AI.
Right.
AI generated that picture.
Well, even
because
then,
you told it to.
Yeah, but even on a bigger scale, even if you have a printed something, that really only helps you and not anybody else, right? Because you could have just printed off.
Yes, correct. But like even like I can't be certain unless I know the person who took it and trust them. And so if you ow, my elbow just popped. That hurt. That hurt. Anyway, if I don't have a primary source that has physical evidence of a thing, then at this point you can just lie about it. And I can't prove it. I can't prove anything unless I have a primary. Right. And even then, it only proves it to me. And so we were kind of talking about this the other day.
Well, and yeah, have you seen the thing about actually, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Finish what you're saying. So what I was going to say was, why do we have corporations lying to our faces about history that pretty much everybody agrees is true? Like, we all agree on one thing, and we have corporations literally gaslighting us, literally saying, no, that was never the case. You have Mandela effect. Why? I think, and I think we kind of came to an agreement on this, I think that they're being pushed by some entity to get people used to the idea that their memory is more fallible than they thought it was, and that they are wrong about a lot of things. And once you get that idea in your head, once you're conditioned to start believing whatever entity is pushing the objective truth, the real truth, and denying your own memory and your own intuition and your own, like, what you believe, then they can hit you with the bigger stuff. And it feels incredibly 1984 Ministry of Truth. Mm-hmm. I hate it. I hate how much it feels like that. We've always been at war with Oceania. We were never at war with East Asia. What? There was never a cornucopia. It was always just a pile of fruit.
Right.
Like, I know it sounds stupid because this is such a trivial thing, but that's how it starts, right? Like, that's how you have to start something like that. You can't just walk up on stage as like the president of the United States or the head of the CIA and go, this was, America has existed since 1500 or whatever. You can't just walk up and throw out something that everyone has always agreed on. You have to start creating distrust. Bless you. You have to start creating distrust small. You have to start things like that small. You have to, and I think we'll get into this at some point whenever Michael's able to be here, but hypnosis, by my understanding, is kind of the same type of deal. Yeah. Like, we talked about it with the, what was the name of the experiment with the electric shock? I can never remember the name of it. But anyway, the experiments, psychological and physical, like stuff like that, you have to start it small. Anytime it comes to psyops and stuff like that, it's small stuff at the start. It's minor things. It's things that you don't think really matter, but so you make concessions. You make compromises in your brain. It's small things. And dude, why else would they lie about stuff like that? What else could how could it benefit anyone to convince me that Chick-fil-A was never spelled Chicfila? Why?
Yeah. Well,
I can't think of another reason.
So, and the thing I wanted to bring up, and I think this will be a good transition, is so RFK Jr., which he is kind of a polarized figure right now because he's, and the thing about RFK Jr., the reason why people either love him or hate him is because he is questioning everything.
Yeah.
Not because he's a terror, not because he's going through and whatever, but he's questioning everything.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying like, okay, with the baby needles, we'll just call them that.
Yeah.
I want some studies done that show long-term health effects.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, you're anti-vax. Okay.
That's not what he said.
Asking for long-term studies to be done is not anti things. It is, hey, let's do our due diligence to see what is going on.
Yeah.
And he just came out and was talking about how he came across actual government files from DARPA. I can't remember what DARPA stands for. DARPA stands for the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. So he came across files and he basically is releasing those in which...
Oh, no, you can't do that.
They talked about, and they did put chemicals in jet fuel in order to affect the weather. What did we just talk about? Britain saying they're doing? Putting these chemicals in the jet fuel in order to affect the sun's effect on Earth, on us, on humans. So DARPA already has been doing it. And man, what a genius. And I'm thinking about it is like the way that they made us, and not us, because I actually wasn't a big like, oh, they're cloud seeding. Like I wasn't a big advocate.
Yeah.
Courtney actually was the one who convinced me. She's like, this is the one conspiracy theory I believe in. And I was like, that's a weird one to believe in because they made you sound stupid because they were like, you're telling me that all of these pilots are turning on a switch in order to cloud seed and then turning it off. Well, then how many pilots? You'd think at least one would, say that they're doing it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fair. But if they're putting it in the fuel, the pilots wouldn't know.
Right.
And if it works and it doesn't get burnt up and it comes out in the exhaust, same exact effect without having anybody other than the people who control the fuel doing it.
Yeah.
Who controls our fuel? Okay, so then you looking back, there was a guy who came out and whistle blew that he got paid a lot of money to go back into all of Disney's old cartoons and add jet lines to them post-production. Why would they need to do that? Because at some point, the jet lines started existing. Okay. So then now jet lines can then be a Mandela effect, whether or not they've always existed since jets existed, since anything used jet fuel. Well, now it's a Mandela effect. They've always existed. They didn't always exist. And it's like, I remember when I was a kid, it was like, there was like one here or there. And now it's like everywhere.
Do you remember Winston's job?
Winston?
Yeah. In 1984.
Oh,
His job was to
rewrite
history books.
Yeah, rewrite the history books. So this dude's job was to rewrite TV, entertainment. Literally the same thing.
Yeah.
Why? Like my thought process, and legit, just like, feel me out. If what you're doing is good, why do you have to hide it? Now, there are things that, I get why they're hidden, like military things.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody who's potentially going to be at war with you to know what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
But man, it's a slippery slope when you start going into like things like that, like controlling the weather.
Yeah.
Or at least trying to.
And what would be the benefit of something like adding jet lines to old cartoons? Like what would be the benefit to people?
Right.
Like what good would that do? All you're doing is trying to spread confusion and distrust.
I would actually bring I would say it does the opposite, in that its attempt is to bring everybody in line, in the same line, that jet lines are just frozen condensation that heated up rapidly and created moisture in the atmosphere. And so if they're not the chemicals that are being released, then it is just the condensation, and they've always existed as long as jets have existed. So anybody who then says, hey, our government is seeding the clouds to try to affect the weather, nut job. Well, how do you know? Well, even in the cartoons back in the 50s, they had the jet lines. See what I'm saying? Like it immediately brings validity to the narrative and not to the conspiracy theories.
But how much confusion and distrust does that put? I mean, like within people, within individuals, because
only the conspiracy theorists,
or anybody who was alive in the 50s and remembers seeing jets fly over and not have trails. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm talking about. Like it's creating distrust in yourself and confusion with your memory. Like it's just, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's meant to bring everybody into the timeline, the thought process that they want you in.
Right.
But that's not reality. That's not truth.
But somebody who's experiencing that now, so when they're like, man, I swear when I was a kid, there weren't jet lines in these cartoons.
Right.
Well, there are now. It's just a Mandela effect. And now we can throw everything under the concept of a Mandela effect.
Right.
Whether it is, and now they've lumped even the things that are coincidence. Like I feel like the Sinbad movie, that one, I think that is just a genuine mistaken memory.
Yeah. Because
there was a movie about Shaq being a genie, and then there was also a Sinbad movie that came out at the same time. In my opinion, now some people swear on it, and if you are one of those, I get it. Apparently, I'm from a different timeline than you. But I remember the Shaq movie because that was a really, I loved that movie.
Right.
And so I remember it as being Shaq, being a genie. And so I don't have this quote unquote false memory of the Sinbad movie, but I could see how that could be just a weird memory mixing because of the popularity of both of them at the same time.
Right.
So now that's also a Mandela effect. So then now the real Mandela effects, like the Mandela, Nelson Mandela having, he totally did not live past the 80s. I swear on that one.
My mom
and then the Chick-fil-A one, those ones now are just, they're mistaken memories. There must be a reason why you remember Chick-fil-A being wrong. And, there must be a reason why you remember Mandela not having lived. Just a weird coincidence of confusion.
Right.
And so they can lump everything together and it just muddies the field.
So let me ask you this. We've mentioned it a few times, but the actual Nelson Mandela thing is a big one. What do you think? I feel like the reality has to be one of two things in my mind, because it's just too prolific of a mismemory. Either he actually did die in the 80s, and I don't know what they brought back or who that dude is, but not him. Or they lied about him dying in the 80s.
Right.
And he disappeared for 20 years for some reason.
Yeah.
And now he's just back doing stuff,
and
they're just pretending like that's full-blown gaslighting.
Right. And that's
So which one do you think it is?
I don't know, because that's the weird thing, because my thought was always like, so even if he did actually live, and he did live until they said he died in the I don't remember, 2010 or whatever.
Yeah.
He just didn't do anything for 20 years to be notable, to be in the news.
That was my mom's thing. She was like,
this dude is like one of the most notable things that we learn about him in our history books.
Yeah.
And then just ceases to exist until he passes away. Like, he didn't do anything else in his life that was notable.
So the way that my mom found out about the Mandela effect was she was super confused when all of a sudden he was like back active in the early mid 2000s. She's like, didn't he die in prison in the 80s. I remember that. Like she thought she remembered like a funeral procession.
I didn't remember that, but I remember learning.
Like she remembered that whole thing in detail. And then a few years later, she heard someone talking about the Mandela effect, and she's like, "Wait, is that what that is? Is that what I have? Is that what this?"
Yeah.
And she was super confused about it, and just like, I swear that happened. I swear it happened. And that's the other thing too, is like, there's stuff that I feel like I remember, and then somebody will be like, "No, that happened this way." And I'll be like, "Oh, okay." You just take it. I thought I remembered this, but like I misremember things. It happens.
Right.
That's fine. And so everyone's okay with that.
Right.
But when it's something that big and that widespread, like that crucial of a memory, like that's a very detailed thing. And so many people remember it the same way.
Right.
When it's something like that, I mean, I don't know, maybe part of it for me is when you're in law enforcement, the way you're taught to like investigate a thing where there's no video, photo, or physical evidence of a thing is you ask as many people who saw it as you can about what happened. And basically, the truth tends to be the thing that the most people agree on.
Right.
If everyone freaking agrees that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 80s, that's probably what happened. Like, I just can't bring myself to accept certain things just because the authority on the subject says it's not what evidence says it is.
Right.
Evidence says Mandela either died in the 80s or was reported to have died in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's a thing. It's just the way that it is.
Right.
You can't convince me that everybody just misremembered that the same way. You just can't. I will not be convinced of that.
I want to get a hold of an old history book, like from...
Like the 90s?
Like when I was, would have been
like late 80s, early 90s.
Want to know something funny that's not going to be important enough to Rabbit Trail?
Yeah, go for it.
My Ring camera just went off, and I was like, no way. It was just a kid.
What's up?
Walking by.
What's up?
I literally...
Frankie Fed?
It went off, and I was like, no. It wasn't.
That'd be hilarious.
That would be so funny. But anyway. Yeah, no. But that's the thing. It's like... But even then, we're being... gaslit into even history, and it's a narrative thing.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the people who are in power in those positions, they like knowing that they can control the narrative.
Right.
When you look at the recent stuff with Rosa Parks, did you know her and her husband both owned cars? She didn't take the bus. There was another woman who was she was like 16 and had a kid, and she was told to go sit in the back of the bus, refused to give her a spot. She went to jail. And rather than making her the story, because it didn't seem to generate as much of a outcry, so then they basically recreated it with an older woman, Rosa Parks, who was clean cut, respectable, had a job, had all this other stuff, so that more quote unquote white people would get behind it. It was President Johnson, dude was, anyway. But yeah, so Rosa Parks, that whole thing, like it's come out in those files, it was completely made up. She and her husband both had cars, and they drove to work every day. She didn't even need to be on the bus.
Dude, that's insane.
Yeah. Well, and then you start looking at some of the files that have been released on Martin Luther King. And supposedly, if you talk to anybody who's a older black person from the South, they already knew that MLK wasn't this clean-cut figure that everybody... Yeah. And now the argument is, of course, the government would try to quote unquote sour his image or whatever, but because of racism back then, because it was the 1960s. Sure. But on the other end of things, so then why didn't they go public with any of that thing if you know what I mean? Right. Yeah. And so, but anyway, and I don't know what to believe on it because there is such a dramatic difference between the two. I gotta go back
and watch Wendigon's video on the MLK assassination.
Well, even beyond the assassination, there's quite a few, we'll just say receipts.
Right.
Of he was not a good person, supposedly.
Disclaimer, we are not trying to undermine the civil rights movement.
Not at all. In fact, I would actually argue that but anyway, and But all that to say, narrative.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Well, now we have the internet, so the narrative is harder to control.
Well, now we have AI, so you like can completely fabricate like photo and video evidence.
Part of the reason I think that AI is being rolled out the way that it is to increase that questioning.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
Because frankly, it is too powerful for the average person to have.
Yep.
At this point, it is crazy the things you can do with AI. And as somebody who uses it very regularly, it's a lot. And I think it's being rolled out the way it is and being incentivized to become better and better and better so that eventually it can be used to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Because the internet exists and things like TikTok exist where people can put out those videos. Well, and then the government coming in and that whole thing of we want to control the narrative versus, say, China controlling the narrative, that makes a little bit of sense. But the problem is, and just before I give it over to you for a second, there was this video where he was talking about propaganda, and there was this person who used to live in China, and they were like, I just don't understand why Americans watch the news. And we were like, what are you talking about? You don't watch the news in China? And he was like, well, no, because we know it's propaganda. So that's why it surprises me that Americans still watch the news. And it's like, oh, so you're implying that we don't know that it's propaganda.
Yeah.
And it's so telling because, oh my goodness, dude, there's so much propaganda. And, but anyway.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one more perspective thing, and then I'm going to springboard off of that into a prediction. So even if you don't use AI to control the narrative, like to direct the narrative to say this is the truth, all you really have to do is use it to undermine the credibility of everything else and make everything questionable and unknowable. If you just get it to the point where you have to doubt everything, at some point you have to pick a source to trust. Yeah. And if a source reveals itself as, hey, I'm trustworthy, and shows some reason to support and believe that, then that's what everyone's going to turn to. And there's your ministry of truth. This is the thing that everybody is forced to get their information from, right? Forced to believe, forced to follow. Now, from there, what's that going to be used to do? I think if you look at it, so I think once we got into the information age, it became real easy to doubt the credibility of the Bible, and specifically like Daniel and Revelation's talking about false prophets. Mm-hmm. At this point in time, it's like, we have access to all the information. How is anybody going to be fooled?
Right.
But when you reach a point where you can't trust any information out there, it's going to be real easy to fall victim to anybody who shows any sign of credibility for any reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think that is where that's going to go. I think once AI becomes prolific enough and advanced enough that we're not able to trust what we believe we're looking at on a screen or whatever, those are going, like, false prophets are going to start revealing themselves very rapidly and very prevalently, to the point where that is what that's going to be. I think that's how that's going to come about. I think AI is going to clear the way for that type of thing, and in turn, probably the Antichrist. The Antichrist. I think that's how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's it doesn't sound like that big of a prediction, but I think it's a pretty significant thing to be considering. I feel like that's relatively easy to arrive at that conclusion on your own. I don't think I need to tell most people that, but I really do. I'm fully convinced that that's what's coming.
Yeah. Somebody once presented to me, what if AI is the Antichrist? And I was like, no, because that's a weird cop out, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But the more advanced that AI gets, the more that I think that it's at least going to play a heavy part into it.
Yep.
But you've got this dude, the one dude that we talked about a couple weeks ago. He supposedly has been like bringing people back to life and stuff like that. According to his followers have been saying.
Interesting.
That people who have passed, he's able to quote unquote bring them back to life.
I'm gonna just refer to him as 18 syllable man because I'm not going to ever remember his name.
I would sound real racist
like
if I tried to remember it.
Exactly. Yeah. 18
I think
syllable
the last part was El Sadiq. That's all I remember.
Sure. Probably.
That's all I remember.
He is 18 syllable man.
The best conspiracy theory on him is that he's a Fed.
Oh, that's
if you look close enough, he's like a Fed who's trying way too hard because he doesn't look like he's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, as a scruffy dude, like there's certain aspects to being scruffy that you just naturally do.
Yeah.
And he's not.
Yeah.
He's like trying way too hard to be scruffy. Yeah. And it's like every bone in his body hurts that he's scruffy. Like everything is clean. There's not a spot on his, and he's trying way too hard to present this image that
he'd have blended in way better out here than the guy we saw yesterday.
Oh, 100. Yeah. But all that to say though is knowing the government's like going into the MK Ultra stuff and how there's been whistleblowers that have been basically saying that it is significantly easier to do this than you would realize. Another note, but what if he is just either somebody who is MK Ultra or he's a government official in order to create chaos in the long run?
Yeah.
I was reading this thing talking about how when celebrities go rogue, they get MK Ultra'd.
Oh, dude.
And holy crap, that would explain a lot.
Yes, it would.
That instead of it being like, oh, they're replaced by a clone, because that's the big conspiracy theory,
right.
Is that when they go rogue, they get taken out and they get replaced with a clone. Why would they do that? They can just MK Ultra these fools. And so then all of a sudden, once they all of a sudden change, they're all of a sudden like super dark and like straight up like demonic at points.
Yeah.
What if they're just literally being MK Ultra'd into being who the government wants them to be?
Kanye.
Yeah.
Bro.
Have you heard his new song?
No.
It's N-word, hail, H-word. I'll shut to you after.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I'm not saying it's kind of a catchy song. I'm not going to lie. But it is... every time it gets posted, it gets deleted. So it's like you got to find that weird somebody random who just is like, I'm going to keep posting it until, whatever, until my account gets deleted kind of accounts. But it's hilarious. It's so stupid. It's amazing. It's so stupid. It's amazing. Wow. Also, dude, I don't think we're going to get into Tartaria.
I was wondering about that.
We could introduce it and do part 2 next week.
I'm good with that. Let's do that.
But before we introduce it, I wanted to say we've been talking a lot about this, and I'm not going to get into the details because I don't want my podcast to get taken down. But the sheer amount of racial division that keeps popping up for me gets to be a point where when I look historically at what the government did during the MK Ultra years in order to try to create a racial war, the more convinced I am that all of this racial stuff is the government setting it up in order to try to increase the racial wars and stuff. And so I think that the government they're trying to go for a round 2 of racial conflict in America, because the more focused you are on things like that, the less focused you are on the things that actually matter. Yeah. And again, controlling the narrative.
What if they're like, it's just what if, but what if they're MK Ultraing like random cops to go, like, because that's the number one thing you see like outrage about, right?
Right.
The white cop killing a black kid. Sorry, unaliving a black kid. Like, what if that's a result of that? Because, like, think about the point that we were at as far as, like, racial cohesion in, like, the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like, we were doing so good. Like, so good. Like, nobody gave a crap about skin color anymore, unless you're in a gang. But, like,
inner cities.
Nobody, like, everybody else, nobody cared about that anymore. And then, like, when was it? What happened? Wait, what was the point? Ferguson?
Maybe.
Was it Ferguson? I feel like that was about the time. It was like 2014, 14-ish, 13, 14, somewhere in there.
Yeah, what was that kid that...
Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, the dude that took him out was Hispanic, but they presented it as though he was white.
Right.
I feel like that was kind of the weird, that timing.
Yeah, it was somewhere right in there. It was like a decision was made. Or like, oh crap, we forgot to keep the race war going. Like, we forgot that this was a thing that we're supposed to be doing, and they just started again.
Right.
It was like a switch got flipped, and all of a sudden we got riots, and the narrative just totally got flipped back to. It was like it was 1960 again, but with 2015 media.
Yeah,
it was
really. I mean,
crazy.
it hit its peak during the Floyd. Stuff.
Yeah.
But in somewhere along the way, it became popular to, even if it wasn't something you truly believed, at least like say that like you couldn't be racist against white people.
Yeah.
And that like the white savior complex and all that stuff started becoming popular. And it's like, bro, like I'm Scandinavian and I like my heritage.
Right.
It shouldn't be racist for me to be proud of the fact that I'm white.
Right.
In the same way that, my brother who's Mexican, he should be proud that he's Mexican.
Yeah. You're proud of who you are.
Yeah. I shouldn't have to feel like my heritage is less worthy of being celebrated.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that exist that I think perpetuate that narrative. For example, there being, and I want to be very sensitive in this, but there being a Black History Month, but there's not, a
Irish History Month.
Yeah, you know what I mean, or even just a White History Month,
right.
And I'm not saying like, and I'm not going to the same length of, when they are saying Black Lives Matter, we need to say White Lives Matter. And I'm not saying that, but as a bigger whole picture, there's not a Mexican month,
right?
Mexican History Month,
right.
Or you know what I mean,
yeah.
And there's not even a Native American. Like there is kind of now, but it's not
Asians either. Asians got horrifically mistreated in America.
And for me, when you start to push those things, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be a Black History Month, but there should be the celebration of other cultures. And even if there's not a white person month, okay, right. As long as you're covering the grounds, right. Like let's cover the other. Let's make sure that we spend as much time and energy on Native American History Month as we do Black History Month. Let's make sure that we put as much time and investment into that.
Yeah.
But right now, the amount of money and resources that get put into like the LGBTQ month, it's astronomical. Like hockey teams and sports franchises straight up changed everything on their design to accommodate this month. But why isn't there a Native American History Month? You know what I mean? And that's what I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a Black History Month, but I'm saying we should be putting as much time and energy onto the other areas, because if you really want to have this conversation about like reparations and stuff, the first population that we need to include is Native Americans in this. I think there should just be none.
I agree.
If I'm going to be honest,
there should be none. Don't disrespect or disparage you for your ancestry, period. I don't care if you're Black, white, Native, Asian, don't care. I do not care. So why is it that you get to disparage me for being white? That's what we're coming down to, is just like the road has got to go both ways.
Yeah.
The road's got to go all ways for everybody. Like you just have to, it's got to be a mutual respect thing. And it's currently not.
Right.
And that sucks.
And I think that the white privilege concept was an extremely faulty and intentional corrosive.
Yeah.
I think it was intentionally corrosive because in my mind, there's not a white privilege. There is a class privilege.
Yes.
And if you came from a super low class, you didn't grow up with a class privilege. You know what I mean? And you might be white, you might be a race, but you didn't get class privilege. There is very clearly a class privilege. But because instead of addressing the issue as a class privilege, we immediately went to white privilege. Now, there might be proportionally, and I haven't even looked at this, but there might be proportionally more white people who are of upper class than not. But to immediately account it to white privilege But anyway, that concept is one that I fought with because the way that it was at least pushed, even if it was trying to say something different, push this narrative that white people should feel guilty about their skin color.
Yeah.
And I don't think so. I don't think we should. No. But anyway, we've talked a lot about race. Was there anything else? We didn't mean to talk about race. This was not on our notes for today. No. Yeah. So any finishing thoughts on that? Just to kind of wrap it up. But yeah, and I think that the more we focus on race rather than class, the more divided we will be intentionally from the government.
I don't even want it to be focused on class. Like, yes, acknowledge that class privilege is a thing, but like, are you really going to hate someone who was born into wealth just for being born into wealth?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and like,
yeah, even then you can't, because then then it's class warfare.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a divisive issue either. The divisive issue should be the way that people treat other people. And that's, yes, if someone who is upper class, high class, uses that to influence how people are treated and uses it poorly, yeah, that's a problem. Address that problem. That's an individual problem. Just like a white person treating a black person poorly, or a Native American person poorly, or a Mexican person poorly is an individual problem.
Yeah.
Go after those individuals and the groups that support that behavior, not everyone that looks like them or sounds like them or is from the place they're from. I don't know why this is so freaking hard. It's 2025, people. Get it together.
But that's the thing. It's getting brought back up.
Right.
And then, there's and these are very controversial things, and I'm not going to get into the details of them because we don't, we're not, whatever. But there's the kid that was stabbed at the track meet. Yeah. And now we've got, the GoFundMe that brought, they made like $600,000 from their GoFundMe. And then in reverse, you have you have the white chick who was calling the little kid the N-word.
Yeah.
So then in retribution, she started to GoFundMe and raised like $300,000. And then you have this black nurse who straight up admitted that she like treats her white patients really crappy to the point where like she'll like let them die. And then she starts a GoFundMe. At some point, like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, let's let the court system but even then, courts can be corrupt too. And it's just all of it and it all just kind of comes down to this thing where it, for me, starts to feel like a massive distraction.
Yeah.
To the point where we're just not, and how susceptible we are to that distraction.
Right.
Makes a big difference.
Like, how real is any of that?
Right.
Do you know anybody that knows any of those people that are involved in any of those situations? Because I don't, so I can't get a firsthand account of if that's real.
Right.
It could be staged. It could be 100% staged. I don't know. And so, yeah, I think bottom line, like the real thing that you need to think about is this worth your time to even think about, focus on? Probably not. Focus on something that matters, something that you can either affect or learn something from in order to do something good, worthy.
Right.
Focus on things worthy of your time.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's just more proof that we all need Jesus. But
yeah.
But speaking of controlling the narrative, and I want to at least tease this because we're time-wise, we're not going to be able to dive into this, but next week we definitely will.
Yeah.
But I want to tease Tartaria, and I mean like tease it. Like, we're not even going to get into like the second point.
Do you think the world had Mandela effect? Like, everybody had Mandela effect about whether this whole civilization existed and existed in the way that some people think?
Well, that's the whole thing about Tartaria is that it existed.
Right.
It was on maps from the 16th and 19th century.
I found a beautiful map. I really want to print it off actually on nice paper.
Well, and if you go to like there's a website. It's called like worldmaps.com or something like that. They have like every map you can dream of.
Yeah.
And you can go and look for yourself. Tartaria existed.
Right, for sure.
But now currently the modern historians say that it was just a generic term.
Right.
They just put Tartaria because they had never been there.
Right.
You're telling me they had been to Central Africa, but not
Southeast
or
Russia, Asia.
Right, in Asia and Russia. You're telling me that they had been to all of these other places that are on these same maps, but they hadn't been to Tartaria? Mm-hmm. That nobody had been to Tartaria? Mm-hmm. You're telling me that they have this just wealth of knowledge of these other places, but not Tartaria? Like, that to me screams really loudly. I don't know how loudly you can go, but like,
I'm not going to do it. I was going to do it, but I'm not going to do it.
But basically, and so now the question of Tartaria for me, my question isn't even necessarily, did Tartaria exist? My question becomes, what about Tartaria did they want to delete?
Right.
And
well, that's more what when I say did Tartaria exist, what I mean is, did the Tartaria that people are like trying to say didn't exist exist?
And there's so many, like,
in what capacity?
100 different things that they attribute to Tartaria that I'm like, you know, because they've got like the other things, and we'll get into it, but I want to tease some of these things, like the concept of the global reset and things like that that are attributed to Tartaria and the need to delete it. But how much of those things actually are associated with Tartaria versus, you know, not? And why for, well, so the 16th and 19th centuries, the 19th century, like, they discovered America at that point, right?
Yeah.
So you're telling me
long since
they knew what was over the world, but they didn't know what was in the region of Tartaria at that point in time? Come on, the Silk Road existed. You know, like, their trade network back then was pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And we're just going to pretend like they just didn't know what was there, and that's why they listed it as Tartaria? That's weird to me. But that's all we're going to get into today. Next week, we're going to get into all of the different things. Like, man, there's so much there. There's a mud flood. There's the
mud flood.
The history reset. There's advanced technologies. There's ties to even like Tesla. Like, there's a lot of different ties to Tartaria that people have made over the years. And I'm really intrigued by this concept. I've been doing a decent amount of research, and I'm actually almost kind of glad that we get a week to get into it, because I feel like I haven't even barely scratched the surface in my research. And so we're just going to leave you with that. Tartaria. Boom. That's it. And that was a fun episode.
Don't be a racist, be your BA best.
Yeah.
Question everything. Trust your memory more than the government says you should.
Is there a race that tends to believe the government more than other races? Like, I know, like, old white people really just trust the news. So it depends on what news they watch. There's no propaganda. The news they watch is not propagandized.
I don't know.
Are white people bad at propaganda?
1940s would say yes.
Possibly. So then are Asians less susceptible to propaganda? Well, maybe not Asians, but at least Chinese are a lot less susceptible to propaganda because they already know that their government is lying to them.
Japan just assumes that everything's propaganda because their emperor didn't talk to them.
So the
40s.
So is
this can be a whole episode.
So is the best propaganda that you don't realize is propaganda?
Yeah.
So what would be now? This is sorry. My brain is. I'm on a note right here.
Oh boy.
So wouldn't then the best propaganda come from sources that you wouldn't associate with propaganda? So rather than it being from the government, from the news, instead it comes from your music and your movies or your social media.
All right, that's the week after next.
That's the best propaganda is propaganda that you control.
That's the week after next
that you put out there.
I'm going to turn your mic off.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
This is a whole episode later.
All right. That means you have to actually do research on it because I won't have enough.
Yep,
all right.
That's fine.
With that, we encourage you to be your BA best.
Like and subscribe.
Do all those things.
Give us the stars.
You guys are amazing. Continue to interact. Think of a friend. One random friend that you're like, hey, this episode, I think they would like it. And just share it with them. It goes a long ways. Literally one share can go a long ways in helping us to continue to build. Also,
get in the Discord.
Get in the Discord.
Give us more Mandela.
We love you. Okay, bye.
days of giants, when the earth was wild and free, a creature roamed the valleys, cloaked in mystery. Is he born of angels' blood and man, a Nephilim so tall, or a shadow of the fallen, yet heeding the Maker's call? He's a biblically accurate Bigfoot, with a lineage from the skies. Not a myth or legend, but a truth that never dies. Is he a remnant of the Nephilim, a titan standing tall, or does he have the